Well, 4 weeks are in the books in the ACC, and this could be the biggest Saturday yet. Today on Playbook, we're looking ahead to not one but two matchups between ranked teams, including a top 10 matchup in Clemson, and of course, we got the rest of the conference covered as well. I am Chris Clark. Let's get this thing started, shall we? First, we're going to have a look at the rankings. Check it out here. There are count them up, four ACC teams in the top 10. That is looking mighty nice. Clemson holding firm at number one as usual. Notre Dame and Miami and UNC not far behind them. And this Saturday, two of those top 10 teams squaring off against each other. And at the beginning of the year, oh man, this is a game that we had circled here on the Playbook show. And not just because, I had relatives that played for Miami, but because of what could be. When Miami travels to Clemson to take on the Tigers, it would only be prime time if Miami could get their act together. And they did. The Hurricanes blasted UAB. They took out a Louisville team by almost 2 touchdowns and then just straight flattened their rivals, Florida State. The Hurricanes ranked 7th in the country, and deservedly so, which makes this game with Clemson the one to watch. They average more points than the other Tigers per game, and then just give them a few more on defense. The Tigers give that back. It's been a while, though, since Miami has played in one of these statement games. Coach Diaz welcomes the pressure, and he wants the limelight on the Canes a lot more often. It's all just part of the process and the long-term plan.
What we're trying to do is we're trying to get ourselves in a position where playing these games is not extraordinary for Miami anymore. That we're in these type of, primetime matchups, the college game day thing, playing a team like Clemson. It's not, this is how you build a program to be in these positions and have it feel kind of natural and normal, which is exactly what it does to Clemson. So this is a great opportunity for us in terms of what we've done over the first 3 weeks to go test ourselves against a team who is very comfortable in these settings but had to earn the right to be there.
Now, this game could have a big effect on the playoffs down the line. The top 10 showdown gets started Saturday night at 7:30. And the Hurricanes, they will be the first real test for the top-ranked Tigers this season. WSBA's Pete Yannity is taking a look at Clemson head coach Dabo Swinney's preparations for Miami.
We are getting set for a huge showdown in Death Valley Saturday night in prime time. Number 1 Clemson against number 7 Miami. It's the first top 10 battle in the Valley since Louisville came in a 3 versus 5 matchup back in 2016. That was an absolute classic, a battle between two great quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson of the Cardinals and Deshaun Watson of Clemson. Well, this time it's Trevor Lawrence for the Tigers against De'Ara King for Miami. The Houston transfers really come in and added some swagger to the Canes offense to go along with a defense that really began improving over the past season or so. Now, Dabo Swinney, in talking about the Miami QB, noting that he gives them versatility.
He's a great quarterback. I mean, he can do it all. There's really nothing he can't do. He can make all the throws, and when he runs it, I mean, he's a running back. He's got that mindset, too, of a running back when he takes off running.
And with the return to their winning ways, let's just say the Canes have become a little bit more chatty. And the Tigers head coach was asked if he likes to see that kind of interaction going on out of the field in front of him.
I think there's a difference in being emotional and reactive and things like that. I mean, you got to just play the game.
However, maybe the Hurricanes are feeling good about things. There is a potential hurricane moving into the Clemson area, expected to hit at some point on Saturday. Covering the Clemson Tigers, I'm Pete Yannity.
Thanks a lot, Pete. Always good stuff, but you don't have to wait around until prime time to see a great matchup on the gridiron. No, another top 25 showdown kicks off the action Saturday at noon. The 19th-ranked Virginia Tech Hokies travel to Chapel Hill to take on the 8th-ranked UNC Tar Heels. And yes, we have WNCN's Alyssa Ray joining us live now to break that one down. How you doing, Alyssa?
I'm good, Chris. Let's start with mentioning last year. This game went into 6 overtimes, so the Hokies eventually coming out with a win, but both teams have improved tremendously. North Carolina's quarterback Sam Howell had a remarkable freshman campaign last season, throwing for more than 3,600 yards and 38 touchdowns. Well, he's back. His 2 top receivers are back in De'Ami Brown and Daz Newsome, and so is the 2-headed monster in the backfield, Michael Carter and Javonte Williams. But considering the talent on this team, they haven't been putting up the gaudy numbers many expected. So I asked Mack Brown and Sam Howell when we'll see this offense's potential.
The biggest thing, Alyssa, is I want them to relax and play. I think they're playing with too much pressure. They're playing that we got to go score all the time, and nobody's going to score all the time.
You know, it doesn't really, we don't really care who gets the ball, who gets all the touches. You know, we have a ton of weapons on this team, and you know, whoever has the ball is going to make a play with it. So we just need to do a good job of putting our guys in good position, just giving those skill guys the ball in space and let them do what they do.
Defensively, I know Jermaine will touch on this next, but the Heels will have to contain Hokies running back Khalil Herbert. He dominated the ground and on kick returns last game. The Heels' run defense and special teams will have to be on their toes and not let this guy loose in open field.
Now, UNC had 3 weeks between their season opener and last weekend's game against Boston College. So I'm sure there's some rest versus rust issues in this game against the Eagles. How are the Heels feeling this week from what you've seen?
Well, it was a tough adjustment to go 3 weeks without playing an opponent. Their game against Charlotte was canceled because of COVID issues on the 49ers team. So I asked Coach Brown, does this week feel more normal to come off a game and prepare for another? He said yes, it's nice to have back-to-back games and that the inexperienced players now have some more game snaps.
All right, can't wait for that one. Alyssa Ray, thank you for taking the time and joining us. I appreciate it there,
Thanks,
Alyssa.
Chris.
All right, and now let's talk about the Tar Heels' opponent. She kind of alluded to it here. Virginia Tech jumped into the rankings all the way up to number 19 after a W just up the road from Chapel Hill over Duke last weekend. And they're looking to keep that mo rolling. WFXR's Jermaine Farrell joins us live now. Before him, there were none, and after him, there will be no more. Jermaine, thank you for hanging out. The Hokie offense, got to ask you about it, man. On fire, scoring 45 in their first win, 38 last weekend. Question is, can they keep up to production in their toughest matchup so far?
Well, good evening, Chris. It's a joy to always see you. By the way, great haircut. I just want to throw it out there. We share the same barber. But speaking of sharing things, I mean, when you look at Virginia Tech, they definitely want to go for the sweep of the triangle because they've beaten NC State, they've beaten Duke. So if they can get the win over the North Carolina Tar Heels, they will sweep that triangle that you guys have down in that neck of the woods. And when you talk about the offense, it has been the running game for the Virginia Tech Hokies. As you mentioned before, they have put the points on the board, but it's all through the running. And, of course, the guy that's been doing it, Khalil Juice Herbert, he's like Tropicana because he's got juice. I mean, you got a guy that's doing it on the ground and also in special teams. He leads the country in yards per game when you talk about running the ball as well as kickoff return yardage. And this is going to be a big challenge because North Carolina's defense is pretty stout. I believe they've only given up roughly 50 yards per game when you go up against them in a running situation. So it's going to be strength against strength. When you look at that, the Virginia Tech offensive line, they're very strong. They call them the Vice Squad after Coach Vance Vice, you know, because of what he does with that offensive line. And it's going to be a fun battle. I mean, Mac Brown even said that Virginia Tech is an underrated team. He feels like that the Hokies should actually be in a top 10 because they won over NC State. They fell out of the top 25 and they got back in. But it's going to be a wonderful matchup. And Chris, real quick, a couple of games that stand out when you look at the series recently. Virginia Tech, they've won the last 4 meetings against the Tar Heels. One game that comes to mind last year, that 6 overtime game, Virginia Tech using 3 quarterbacks to get the job done. And then you go back, it was on this day 4 years ago when Virginia Tech played at Chapel Hill. They won 34-3. It was Justin Fuente's first season as head coach, and they held North Carolina to 131 yards of total offense, and they did it in a downpour as a hurricane was in the area in Chapel Hill.
I was going to say history repeating itself there, maybe a little bit sloppy on Saturday when things are coming up here. Now, now, Virginia Tech's lineups have been changing a lot this year after players tested positive for COVID-19. The fact they can take a punch is remarkable, but who are we going to see take the field on Sunday or Saturday, rather, or is that still up in the air?
I tell you one thing, it's going to be interesting because, I mean, the last couple of weeks we get the word that they're down nearly 24 players. And to have the strength and the way they've done it, I mean, Coach Justin Fuente has given so much credit to the football team, the character of the team, because when you lose that many players, you could easily just phone it in. But the Virginia Tech Hokies, they've rallied and they've done it. Now, I'm hearing that defensive coordinator Justin Hamilton is expected to be with the team coming up this Saturday. And, you know, there's been a lot of shifting and movement. But as far as players, there's a possibility that Hendon Hooker, the starting quarterback, that could get it in there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when the Hokies and the Tar Heels, they hook up for a high noon showdown. And it's going to be a great one, Chris. I mean, I know you're ready. I know everybody in the Triangle is ready. And the interesting thing is, like I mentioned, you know, Virginia Tech, they still have another game against a North Carolina school. That's Wake Forest. So potentially they're halfway. They're sweeping the Tar Heel State and Tech. Since Justin Fuente has been at Virginia Tech, when you talk about the North Carolina schools, he's only lost that one game, and that was to Duke last year at Lane Stadium. But I'm fired up for it. And yes, it could be sloppy, but hey, 4 years ago we had sloppiness as far as the weather. Could be the same thing, like you mentioned.
Hey, you got to take what the weather gives you there, man. Thank you, Jermaine. Pleasure as always. And just remember there, my friend, God only made a few perfect heads. The rest he covered up with hair. You have a good day, man. Take care.
You too. Take care.
Moving right along here. Notre Dame, yeah, has almost become the forgotten top 10 team in the ACC. The Irish haven't played a game in almost 3 weeks now, and as WTTV's Chris Widlick reports, well, that makes coming back to the field a bit of a tough task.
At long last, Notre Dame football is back. The fifth-ranked Fighting Irish not only had to postpone their game at Wake Forest a few weeks back because of a COVID outbreak, but then they had an open date last Saturday. That means they haven't played since September 19th in a rout of South Florida in South Bend. Well, head coach Brian Kelly knows working their way back into game mode, especially against a high-profile Florida State team built on speed, is a pretty tough task.
Understanding that it's really hard to take 2 weeks off and think that you can just pick it up without a lot of work and a lot of attention to detail. I think we can go out and play well. But it's going to require everybody to a man to really be purposeful in their work this week. We've played a couple of games. We've had a lot of practices leading into this. But 2 weeks off definitely is something that you can't just think we're going to roll it back out there and all things are good. It's not. It's going to require, as I mentioned, really leaning on an attention to detail that maybe they've never had before.
It's Notre Dame's first top-notch ACC contest this fall and will come under the lights at Notre Dame Stadium against a Seminole team still trying to find its footing. That'll start a third different quarterback this season. Covering the Fighting Irish for Playbook, I'm Chris Widlick.
Thank you, Chris. Irish fans going to have to wait all day Saturday to see their team return. Kickoff against Florida State is at 7:30. WMBB's Courtney Mims taking a closer look at that new starting quarterback situation for the Seminoles. Courtney.
Third time's the charm, right? Or at least that's what the 1-2 Florida State Seminoles are hoping as they get ready to take on number 5 Notre Dame with their third different starting quarterback this season. Jordan Travis will lead the offense this week, and Seminoles head coach Mike Norvell said he has earned the job after his performance against Jacksonville State this past weekend. Travis came in for true freshman Tate Rodemaker as the Noles were trailing 14-0. He led them to come back from the deficit for a 41-24 victory. Travis finished 12 of 17 for 210 yards and a touchdown. He also rushed for 48 yards and a score. And Norvell says the offense will be built around him this weekend.
It's playing to the strengths that we have with all 11 guys that are on the field, and then obviously trying to make sure that we're taking what the defense gives us throughout the course of a contest. And so Jordan provides a lot of versatility and flexibility and what we want to do and what we can do. So you're definitely looking forward to seeing that all come together and allowing our guys to go out there and play fast.
There's still a lot of question marks as Travis is not proven just yet against an ACC opponent like the Fighting Irish, and we shall see if the Noles defense can step up to the challenge on Saturday as well. Reporting on Florida State, I'm Courtney Mims.
Thank you, Courtney. It's been a couple of days now, but Pat Narduzzi and the Pitt Panthers still smarting from that last-minute loss to the NC State Wolfpack. And why not? I mean, with under 2 minutes to go, Pitt actually led the game, only to see it taken away from them by a great drive and an even better catch. And they watched the tape. They learned from the mistakes. Coach said the team meetings were quiet, and he knows it hurts. He said it hit him right in the stomach. It was a wake-up call. Now, the meetings were quiet, but not like a morgue quiet in there. No, the Panthers were focused this week. And if a loss can actually be good for a team, it will be for Pittsburgh. You see, this week they get Boston College, a team still trying to find their way. Pitt is a 6-point favorite, and last we checked, but they need to tighten up to get the win against Jeff Hafley and those Eagles.
Jeff's got that team, on really all three phases playing tough. I mean, he's those defensive guys stick together, but he's a tough, physical, well-coached football team on both sides, and special teams. That's what you see out of them. They're a good football team. They took, North Carolina to the end. They fight back and beat, a Texas State football team, and really, that's the last 2 weeks, but really, really good football team.
And those Boston College Eagles he's talking about looking to bounce back from a loss to UNC. Now, they hung with the Tar Heels the entire game. Drove the field, got the touchdown, but they just couldn't convert that two-point conversion to keep things going. And this week, the Eagles take on Pitt. The Eagles should be able to move the football well with their quarterback, Phil Jerkovic, throwing for two 300-plus yard games and a 210-yard outing in his last 3 appearances there. The problem is that Boston College run game. They haven't had a 90-yard rusher in any of their 3 games. It's just been abysmal. The average, less than 2.5 yards per carry. You kind of see where we're going here with this. Once inside the red zone, they got serious problems converting. And with their defense also having trouble getting off the field on 3rd down, it all comes down to one word. That word is execution. Right, Coach?
Well, you said it. It's execution. And in the red zone, Kevin, there's really such a small room for error, because the space is so tight and you got to be so sharp and so on top of it. So you really got to be efficient on your stuff, and I'm just hoping, the further the season goes and the more experience we get, that will tighten up and, we'll make the plays that are there. But that's on offense and defense, man. That's where everything happens so fast where you got to really be on it. And hopefully we'll play better on both offense and defense down there.
That's Chris, not Kevin, Coach. But, you got a lot on your mind. It's okay. Believe it or not, when the Eagles and Panthers square off at Chestnut Hill Saturday, it'll be the Pitt's first road game of the season. After 4 in a row at home, kickoff is set for 4 o'clock. And Virginia, they took it on the chin at Clemson last week, just like most teams do. But the Cavaliers, they're still rolling along with a big win streak at home. As WRIC's Natalie Calabit reports, they'll be looking to keep that streak going this week against NC State.
Virginia is looking to get back in the win column after losing at Clemson last week. The Cavaliers were competitive but couldn't overcome a slow start, falling 41-23. One of the bright spots was quarterback Brennan Armstrong. After starting out with 7 incomplete passes on his first 8 throws, Armstrong finished the night with 270 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. UVA coach Bronco Mendenhall says an experienced offensive line has helped Armstrong grow.
Brennan is the benefactor right now of probably the best situation he could have of a consistent offensive front while he's inheriting the reins of being the starting quarterback.
The play of nose tackle Jawan Briggs was a reason for that. The sophomore out of Cincinnati started 7 games last year and has continued his progression in year 2.
I think Jawan is playing at a higher level than he did a year ago. I think the technical and fundamental emphasis that Coach Sintum is bringing has really helped Jawan.
Consistency is also what Mendenhall wants on offense ahead of this week's meeting with NC State.
The ACC is a competitive league. There's tons of balance. Every week is difficult. The schedule is unrelenting. And the teams that are the most consistent, moving the ball and scoring points, will have the best outcome.
The noon kickoff will mark NC State's first visit to Charlottesville in 9 seasons. If the Hoos win, it'll be their 10th straight victory at Scott Stadium. Covering Virginia, I'm Natalie Calabit.
Thank you, Natalie. Great stuff. And NC State's trip to Virginia will be their 3rd straight game on the road. Now, they escaped a 1-point win over Pitt last week, we talked about. And as WNCN's Todd Gibson reported, it came after a new focus in practice after a tough loss the week before. Todd?
Practice makes perfect. It's an old adage passed down through the years. NC State head coach Dave Doran believes it. But at one point this season, apparently, his players did not. Doran was not happy with the way his team practiced leading up to the Virginia Tech game, and it showed in a 21-point Hokies blowout. But since that time, he's been happy with the way his team has practiced. Players even calling out teammates when they don't practice well.
Well, I think it's how you do it. It's got to be constructive. It can't be personal. And I think we've talked a lot about that. It takes courage for a teammate to tell you something like that. And so you need to understand he's coming to you from a place of love and that he cares and that he wants to win. Every team has coaches that motivate and that coach and detail things. But when your teammates are holding you accountable and writing you and demanding things from you, and the guys that are doing that are also the guys making the plays on game day, not the guys that are in the training room, it's a big difference. And I think you're seeing that right now when we're playing well.
Yeah, I definitely think we have some great leaders on this team. If they see another teammate slacking or doing things that they're, maybe a little lack of effort or whatever, they're going to call them out. And I definitely think that's something, maybe we might have been missing last year a little bit. And it's definitely good to see, we have some good leaders on this team.
Coming into the season, calling people out and stuff it's not as challenging as it would be last year because, people are more open to it. People are more accepting. So when calling someone out, it's just part of the normal routine now. Like, we just holding each other accountable.
NC State ends a grueling 3-game road swing in Charlottesville on Saturday when the Cavaliers and Wolfpack tee it up at high noon. Following the Wolfpack in Raleigh, I'm Todd Gibson.
Thank you, Todd. Good stuff as always. And after spending time in the top 25 at the start of the year, Louisville is still looking for their first ACC win this season. WEHT's Randall Parmley is covering the Cardinals for us. Randall.
Well, the Louisville Cardinals return to the ACC grind this weekend, and perhaps Scott Satterfield's team needed a little early season break. Conference play has not treated Louisville well after a season-opening non-conference win against Western Kentucky. Louisville has now dropped back-to-back ACC games to Miami and Pitt. Satterfield says his team is hungry for a win as they get ready to travel to Georgia Tech.
Typically, sometimes in a bye week, you get guys want to sit out or, guys that have played a bunch of ball. But, our guys all participated and went hard in practice. And so that was a good sign to see. You're coming off of 2 tough losses back-to-back, and we know how big a game this is for us, and probably very similar for them as well. They've lost 2 in a row also. So it's a big game, ACC game for us, and, we're excited about getting back on the field and playing.
Louisville and Georgia Tech will play on Friday night. Covering the Louisville Cardinals, I'm Randall Parmley.
Hey, Randall, you heard the man. Friday night lights in Atlanta when the Cardinals face off against the Yellow Jackets. Yeah, kickoff tomorrow night at 7. And WJBF's Colin Cody is covering Georgia Tech, who's looking to turn some positive stats into points and wins.
After his first of 2 scheduled bye weeks this season, Georgia Tech football returns to action on Friday with the national televised primetime showdown versus Louisville at Bobby Dodd Stadium. Tech is hosting Louisville for the first time and playing the Cardinals for only the 2nd time ever on the gridiron after Louisville joined the ACC back in 2014.
Georgia Tech enters this matchup ranked in the top 25 in 10 different statistical categories, one being 22nd in total offense, averaging 454 yards, but the results in yards and points aren't there. And that's one thing that Jeff Collins would like to correct this week.
There is so much market improvement. And the other thing is the turnover piece, getting into the red zone. The first 3 drives 2 games ago, we got into the red zone inside the 10-yard line. The first 3 drives come up with 7 points. But the way the guys work, the way the guys prepare, the way the guys are playing at a really high level, and then we just cannot hurt ourselves, which has been a mark of the last 2 games.
Kickoff from Bobby Dodd Stadium Friday will be at 7 p.m. I'm Colin Cody, covering the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets for ACC Playbook.
Thank you, Colin. Appreciate it. 4 games in, and the Duke Blue Devils have yet to put a check mark in the win column. Not only that, but the way they've been losing has people concerned. You see, Duke leads the league in turnovers. They average the fewest points per game. Those 2 things are not the hallmark of a David Cutcliffe coach team. No, but they are showing signs of improvement. Last week, they held on against Virginia Tech and only had 1 turnover, and that was from a tip pass. So, that really doesn't count. Come on now. It's obvious the team's working harder on the practice field. It just hasn't showed up on the scoreboard just yet. And what coach is afraid of is the players on his team trying to do too much instead of just doing their one job well.
We're going to have to get to where all 11 positions, whoever is lining up and playing there, all 11 positions are doing their job. Just do your job. Nobody has to be Superman. You don't have to do more than what's required. You just have to do what's required. And if we take that approach in all of our phases, we'll be just fine. We've got enough good football players to play and win when we play well together, and that's got to be the theme.
And a lot of college football, you know, is attitude. And the Duke players and coaches, they have buzzwords that they use to get guys up and going after a play. One is hot stove, as in treat the ground like a hot stove and get up after you're knocked down. Make the next play. It's a reminder to keep a short memory and focus on what's in front of you. Let the last play go. Don't let it carry over if it didn't work out.
I think from a game day perspective, when you're struggling, maybe one of the biggest issues, though, is you don't want to, you're going to give up some big plays. Things are going to happen sometimes that aren't good. You don't want that here we go again mentality to creep into your team. Don't let one mistake become two, would be what I would say is the game day operation of learning how to win.
One of the issues Duke's going to deal with this week is that Syracuse up-tempo offense. Despite being favored by almost a field goal on the road, Duke knows the Qs could score in bunches. Put up 14 on the Blue Devils last year in the first quarter and never looked back. Duke cornerback Leonard Johnson, for one, isn't trying to let that happen again. And the new routine at practice has got them ready for whatever the Orange is going to throw their way.
For today's practice, we had 2 different huddles for scout team, you know, running in and out plays rapidly, rapid speed. It's not like the usual practice, but with the hurry up, we had 2 huddles for scout team. They just ran in and out, and we didn't come off the field. We just stayed on.
And this game with Syracuse will be the 5th time the two teams have played each other. Duke actually leads the series 3-1 all time, but last year Syracuse got their first win over Duke, and they made some noise doing it, coming to Durham and blowing them out 49-6. Statement win, or whatever you want to call it. Message received by Duke. All the players that were there last year, well, they got that game burned into their memory. Oh, and they want another shot at the Orange for it.
I do think any football player is embarrassed by poor performance, and they want to respond. They're well aware of what occurred a year ago.
Most definitely, it's definitely something we talked about. As we all know, last year's game and the score was definitely unacceptable. And me personally, it left a sour taste in my mouth, and I know it left a bad taste in the rest of my teammates' mouth. So we're definitely extremely motivated, more than ever, to come to this game and come out with a win.
We're using the loss for motivation. Because last year, I mean, we didn't get the outcome we wanted, but we've been game planning. We know they like to hurry up on offense, so we're just getting ready for that.
This year's contest is in the Carrier Dome, the newly renovated Carrier Dome up there at Syracuse. Kickoff set for Saturday at 12:30. And, of course, Duke won't find the win column this week if Syracuse can help it. WSYR Steve Infante is covering the Orange, who are coming off a bye week after picking up their first win. Steve?
Well, when the Las Vegas odds were released on Monday for this week's college football games, I actually did a double take when I saw the Syracuse-Duke line. The Blue Devils are 0-4. They're on the road. They lead the entire country in turnovers lost, yet somehow they opened as about a field goal favorite. Doesn't make a ton of sense, especially with the Orange coming off of a win and then the extra rest from a bye week. Dino Babers and his guys are back at practice, gearing up for another toss-up game. SU ignored the odds makers the last time out, beating Georgia Tech 37-20, despite being considered a touchdown underdog. As for the turnover numbers, again, Duke leads the country in giveaways. The Q's defense is number 2 in takeaways, but Dino says he's not counting on that trend to necessarily continue this Saturday.
Yeah, Coach Cutcliffe's an amazing coach. He really is. He's gone around. He's been around a long time, and he's coached some of the best players, not only in college, but in the National Football League. He's not going to allow that to continuously happen, especially with him being an offensive guy with his offense. So I expect that to be cured. And I expect to be playing a Duke football team that's not going to be turning the ball over a bunch.
Now, Dino Babers would not say whether or not All-American safety Andre Cisco would play. He's listed on the depth chart, but again, did not play against Georgia Tech because of injury. Kickoff set for 12:30 inside the Dome. Covering Syracuse, I'm Steve Infante.
Well, this might just be the biggest week in the ACC so far. So let's bring on Jason Logan from Covers.com to help us break it all down. And Jason, no bigger game this week than Miami at Clemson. How are bettors treating this matchup of top 10 teams, my man?
Yeah, here, Clemson opened -15 and instantly bet down to -17 with action on Miami. We haven't seen the Tigers really turn it on yet. 0-3 against the point spread this season. They own an average margin of victory of over 30 points, but that doesn't help sports bettors out any when they're always looking at a point spread of -37. That's been their average point spread through 3 weeks. We look at Miami, the exact opposite in terms of betting success here, a perfect 3-0 against the spread. A lot of firepower on the field here. Two great quarterbacks in Trevor Lawrence and De'Ara King. We expect some points, right? And that's what odds makers are expecting too. They opened this total at 61. It's been bet up as high as 64 with action on the over. If we look at the historicals between these two teams here, Clemson done well against the spread, actually 5-1 in the last 6 meetings with the Hurricanes, and these teams have gone over the total in 4 of their last 5 meetings.
Well, another great game in the conference is Virginia Tech taking on North Carolina. Now, the last time they met the Hokies in heels, they needed not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 overtimes to figure out a winner. Are the books calling for another close one or what here?
Yeah, it's a pretty tight spread. We got UNC giving 4.5 at home. North Carolina struggled in the second half last week against Boston College. Needed a stand on a 2-point conversion to get out of there with the win, and they did. We look at the Hokies here, and they have QB questions. Who are they going to go with? Are they going to go with their current starter, Braxton Burmeister, or are they going to go back to Hendon Hooker, who had missed time due to COVID issues? We look at quarterback Sam Howell for North Carolina, not performing that well compared to last year's stats here through 2 games in 2020. And this spread actually has dropped from 5.5 down to 4.5 with action on Virginia Tech. They've covered in 6 of the last 7 matchups with UNC. And we want to keep our eyes on the skies for this one here too, because could be some possible rain in the forecast for Chapel Hill.
Always wondering exactly what it's going to be like when things get a little muddy and mucky out there. It always makes for an interesting game. Now, moving on here, Notre Dame returns to action after a COVID outbreak shuttered the program since September the 19th. What can we expect from the Irish when they take on Florida State Saturday?
Yeah, well, books gave them plenty of respect here, or maybe they just discounted Florida State because they opened Notre Dame minus 21.5. Instantly, they got bet down through the key number of 21 down to 20.5, and that's where they sit right now. The Noles making a QB switch. They're going to go with Jordan Travis. He gives them a bit more mobility at quarterback, but how much he gets to play with the football, we don't know quite yet. Considering Florida State has just been gashed on the ground by rushing attacks. They're giving up 4.7 yards per carry, and then we got Notre Dame, a fantastic running team, averaging almost 230 yards per game through their first 2 contests. That's also equating itself into an average time of possession of almost 33 minutes. So they're just going to use that big offensive line and plow the road and keep the ball away from the Hurricanes. From the Seminoles. The total for this one was it's down to 52 points. It opened at 50, so some action on the under. We look at Notre Dame in home games. They've actually gone under in 5 of their last 7 home stands.
Here's what I know for sure. They got some problems in Tallahassee. They got to figure some things out quick. Hey, thanks, Jason. Enjoy the games, man. Have a great weekend. And Wake Forest, the only ACC team without a game this weekend. The Demon Deacons have yet to win a conference game, but they're coming off a lopsided win over Campbell. And as WGHP's Danny Harden reports, Wake Forest running game, they're starting to come around.
The Wake Forest football team will have the weekend off. They're feeling good right now, coming off a dominating win over Campbell, 66-14. The Deacons' running game really rolling right now. If you take the last 2 games against Campbell and NC State, the Wake Forest running back duo of Christian Beal-Smith and Kenneth Walker have combined for 405 yards and 8 touchdowns.
It all starts with our O-linemen. Our linemen are doing a great job. They're working hard doing med balls and individuals during our practices. They're just busting their tails, and we couldn't thank them enough for doing that. And as far as Kenny, me, our running back group, we're just playing lights out. We're just trying to do what we can do.
As a unit, we're doing really well. But I mean, Kenneth Walker and Christian Beal, you block for them for a solid 4 seconds, and then you just kind of watch. And it's amazing what those two can do. So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun this year.
When asked about a possible nickname for the running back duo, Christian said they're being called Thunder and Lightning. When asked which one is which, he said they're a little bit of both. Wake Forest back in action a week from Saturday at home against Virginia. Reporting on the Deacons, I'm Danny Harnden.
I gotta love the nicknames. Thanks a lot there, Danny. And thanks for joining us for Playbook. Remember, you can catch a new episode every Thursday night at 7 right here. And until next week, get out there and watch some football, everybody. I'll see you next Thursday.